We've already seen the results from President Trump's bold peace through strength diplomacy on the world stage. In response to President Trump's tariffs this week, both Mexico and Canada took immediate steps to alleviate the illegal alien migration and flow of deadly drugs, particularly fentanyl, into our country. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to permanently supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the U.S. border who will be specifically designated to stopping fentanyl and criminal aliens from pouring into our country. And Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau agreed to appoint a fentanyl czar, list cartels as terrorists, and increase resources to assist the 10,000 frontline personnel at our northern border with Canada. Go ahead.
As we talked at length earlier in the week on the live stream, was it Monday or Wednesday? Anyway, I don't remember, but it's shocking that it took this long and these threats for the Liberals to finally take action. We've had a whole campaign at fixourcities.com. I think we might also have .ca, calling on the government to do just that: clean up the streets, curb the crime, bring back, a judicial system that actually acts in the best interest of restoring justice in the country, and get the drugs off of the streets. The things that are happening in cities, towns, and parks all across this country is nothing new to anybody who has been paying attention the last few years, and it's crept out. It's not just isolated anymore in the big cities. It's like homeless sprawl, urban sprawl has come out into these small towns and municipalities who don't have the social services or the infrastructure to assist with these issues. And so it's become a real problem. And we've been highlighting that, reporting on it, shining a light on it for the better part of a year, maybe even closer to 2 years since that campaign was first launched. And finally, it took not Canadians caring about the safety of their streets or the drug problem, but for the United States president to point it out and threaten tariffs for the government to finally take action. It's absurd.
I just, out of the corner of my eye, I was like, how many people have actually died of fentanyl in Canada? Because I thought, if the number is large, then it is, of course, a failing of the federal government to act to keep Canadians safe. Like they moved heaven and earth and they shut everything down for 3 years over COVID. And that only affected basically the elderly and people that a strong wind would kill in some instances. Canada has recorded 50,000 deaths of fentanyl since 2016, and this data is from the end of 2024. So, and that number is only going up. I think it is, according to the data, anyways, it's a 39% increase since 2016, that it is fentanyl. Of opioid deaths, fentanyl accounts for 79% of that. So if you want to take a bite out of the fentanyl or the opioid deaths, then you have to go after the fentanyl specifically. I think it's 11 people a day right now are dying that they know of. I mean, take that for what you will. But that doesn't even take into account the people who die of other things because of their fentanyl addiction, like hepatitis or freezing to death or alcohol abuse or like just the lifestyle, the problems of living a dangerous lifestyle. Like you might end up murdered at the hands of your pimp or a John because you're hooked on fentanyl. And the government is doing nothing to stop the trafficking into this country. So this is a nationwide crisis. And our prime minister only acted because he was forced to do the right thing by the leader of another country. He was never, ever going to do the right thing by Canadians. And we know that because of how his government treats the drug problem in this country. They are acting as the drug dealers and the enablers, like literally the opposite of the advice that they give a family experiencing this. Don't give money to the drug addict, let them hit rock bottom, then have a zero tolerance for their drug use. the government acted as the enablers in all of this. They've made the problem excessively worse.
Yeah, the data that I pulled, this report is a year old. So
Yeah.
January, the end of January 2024. I did a report on the Liberals' misguided $1 billion drug strategy, which has only seen an increase in overdoses and subsequently overdose deaths, because they do make
Yeah.
that differentiation, because we have the saving grace of Narcan, which is a taxpayer-funded temporary saving strategy, pharmaceutical product, to counteract the effects of a fentanyl overdose. But anyway, this is a report. I featured a report published by Health Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada, evaluating the Canadian Drugs and Substances Strategy. So that's a thing that the federal government has implemented. It's called CDSS. And a tabulation of the strategy in the first 5 years that it ran, so from 2017 until 2022, shows that overdose and drug related deaths continue to rise in Canada, despite the federal government spending more than $800 million in a failed attempt to curb the overdose crisis. And then there was an additional $352 million over 5 years implemented by former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland in budget 2023 to renew. She actually renewed this failing strategy a year after these 5 years of tabulation showed that it wasn't doing anything, and it was actually only making the problem worse, totaling their budget allocation to this failed strategy to be over $1 billion of taxpayer dollars. This is absolute madness. And now here we are in the beginnings of 2025. And finally, we see the government is saying, oh, wait a minute. Now we're going to listen to the concerns of a foreign president and take notice that our strategy obviously isn't working, and we need to do something to curb the crime and clean up our streets, not for the Canadian people, but because we're bowing to the whim of the US president.
Yeah, like why does Donald Trump care more about uh, Canadians dying from fentanyl than our prime minister, or for that matter, our idiot stick of a health minister, Mark Holland, who has run his mouth at every instance. You know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to go back and watch Mark Holland's appearances at the health committee on this topic. He's sitting there testifying, being questioned by the conservatives, while parents who've had children die of fentanyl are sitting right there saying, look, we're handling this. We're doing the right thing. We're making life better. And there's parents of dead teenagers sitting right there. And he's got absolutely no empathy or understanding of the government's role in what happened to their child. And now he's kind of got to eat those words, because they're appointing a fentanyl czar, and it's not him, because he has actually been the fentanyl kingpin of this country for the last little bit, between him, of course, and Bonnie Henry, leading the drug cartel here in this country.
Yeah, Bonnie Henry in British Columbia, which is the fentanyl hub of the country and one of the main ports of entry, as we're finding out and hearing from between the US and Canada, and the place where this has really been an escalating and ongoing thing. British Columbia was the province that pioneered this,
Yeah.
supposed drug strategy, safer, as though there's any form of safe supply of illicit and highly addictive and highly toxic drugs. They've been at this since, I think it was 2014 or 15. I mean, it's
Oh,
been
way before
20,
that.
maybe
It's
even, before that.
Yeah, I think they've been doing their safe supply nonsense, and what were dubbed shooting galleries, a safe place to do your drugs. And then it became a safe place to do and get your drugs. They've got a generation's worth of data from the downtown east side on this. And instead of making things better, more people are addicted than ever. More people are dying of overdoses in British Columbia than ever. And the social decay that was small and limited to one place has spread and spread and spread like a cancer across the society. And now their safe supply is ending up in Alberta, killing Albertans.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have the leader of the official opposition, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, announcing that he will bring back our justice system and throw away the key for fentanyl kingpins. He says that Canada should do this without pressure from Donald Trump. I mean, where have you guys been the last few years? But nonetheless, here we are to protect Canadians from this soft on crime liberal approach.
President Trump has threatened to tariff Canada because of what he says is lethal drug flows. But whether or not we agree with him should not matter. It should not take a foreign leader to get the Liberals to wake up to the drug crisis that they have caused here at home. It should have been enough that we lost 50,000 of our people. We should crack down on drugs, not to please President Trump, but to ensure that not one more mother has to bury her face in her hands on learning that her son died of an overdose in a back alley somewhere. We must stop drugs to save our people and put Canada first. It starts with locking up mass traffickers and manufacturers of this poison with penalties that fit the crime. But what is that crime? Let's call fentanyl trafficking what it is: mass murder.
Yep.
Selling 40 milligrams of this poison is enough to kill 20 people. It's like spraying bullets into a crowd. You might not know who you're killing, but it's certain someone will die. That's why I'm denouncing today, as part of my Canada First plan, that common sense Conservatives will bring mandatory prison sentences. There will be life sentences for anyone caught trafficking, producing, or exporting over 40 milligrams of fentanyl. 40 milligrams is enough to kill 20 people. Anyone who is involved in trafficking that amount of fentanyl will get a life sentence. We will lock them up and we will throw away the key. And 15 years for traffickers caught with between 20 milligrams and 40 milligrams will be the new mandatory sentence.
Yeah, it was the bail reform that the Liberals
Mhm.
brought in that has seen
Yep.
these criminals just released back onto the streets within hours of being arrested, even repeat offenders. So the fact that our judicial system is basically just preoccupied with whether or not people are gender identifying in the right way that the government wants to see them
Yeah.
identifying as, we don't have a robust criminal justice system at this point, and it's been that way for several years. And now, it's the everyday Canadian reeling and living that on the streets that we see. I'm glad that Trump has prompted this conversation to happen on this broader political scale. But I really wonder where all of these conversations were years ago when it's people like us, the little guy, started reporting on it, listening to the everyday person on the street, the underdog in many ways, in many instances, and including the people who are quote unquote, the most vulnerable, the homeless people themselves and drug addicts themselves that say, we can't get help, we can't get resources